The medical director of Millhaven Regional Medical Centre wanted the staff to watch when he did it. He made that very clear. He wanted witnesses. Before I tell you what happened in the following hour, welcome to Steady Badge's Stories. If you believe that silence is not the same as weakness, hit like and subscribe, and drop a comment below letting me know where in Canada, or anywhere in the world, you're listening from tonight. Now, let me tell you about Camille Fortin. She was the kind of nurse nobody wrote memos about. 38 years old, medium height, brown hair pulled into a bun she had readied 6 times since her shift began at 7 that morning. Her scrubs were the same bright blue as everyone else's on the floor. Her badge read RN and nothing after it. She spoke quietly at handoffs, kept her notes precise and short, restocked the supply carts on overnight shifts when no one was watching. New residents sometimes mistook her patience for passivity. They stopped making that mistake the first time they watched her manage a code. But on the night of January 17th, with a freezing rain warning in effect across all of northern Ontario and every ambulance in the Millhaven district already running double calls, Director Craig Holmberg decided that Camille was exactly who he wanted to humble. He chose the charge desk because it had the best camera angle. "You've been filing complaints," he said, loud enough that 2 residents and a charge clerk all turned to look. Understaffing, tridge delays, supply protocol. He smiled like a man holding a very good hand. "Well, tonight's your chance to show us how it's done." The ambulance bay doors opened before anyone could respond. 5 stretchers came through in under 3 minutes. A construction scaffold on Brennan Street had collapsed under the weight of accumulated ice. 5 workers, 5 sets of alarms. Families were already calling the main line, their voices cracking through the hold music. Outside, the freezing rain hammered the sliding doors hard enough to rattle them in their tracks. Holmberg gestured toward the bays with an open hand. "All yours, Fortin." He glanced at the camera above the charge desk. The red recording light blinked steadily. Let's see what all those memos were really about. Dr. Annika Foss appeared at the edge of the group. She was the attending on duty, sharp and thorough, someone who had spent a decade being the first to speak up in hard rooms. She looked at Holmberg with an expression that stopped just short of words. Holmberg saw it. "You're welcome to observe, Annika." "That's not what I was about to say." "I know," he stepped back, "but it's what you'll do." Camille had not moved since the ambulances arrived. She stood between the stretchers and the bays with her hands loose at her sides, reading the 5 patients with a kind of steady attention that did not announce itself. Then she spoke. "Bay 1 is the foreman, Bay 2 is the young one, Bay 3 gets the chest wound, Bay 4 gets the woman from the site office, Bay 5 gets the femoral." No one had told her their names yet. Beth Carr, the nurse who had worked beside Camille for 3 years without knowing much about her, stared at her. "How did you?" The paramedics radioed. Camille had already pulled gloves from the wall dispenser. "Bay 1, go." The room moved. Holmberg folded his arms and watched from the glass wall of the charge station, with the expression of a man who expected to be collecting a very useful piece of footage by morning. Jordan Crow was 44 years old, a site foreman with 20 years of work permits and safety logs, and the particular posture of a man who had spent 2 decades telling younger men to be careful. He came in with a crushed larynx and a construction helmet still clipped to the equipment bag a paramedic had carried in alongside him. A small red light blinked on the helmet's GoPro mount. No one mentioned it yet. His oxygen saturation read 78 when Camille reached him. "He lost the airway once in the rig," the paramedic said. "Got it back, it's not holding." Camille looked at Jordan's neck. At the way his chest moved wrong, she pressed 2 fingers to the angle of his jaw. Beth suction and bag, Marco monitor and hold his shoulders. Marco Diaz, the ER tech, had been working at Millhaven Regional for 11 months. He had never once heard Camille give a direct order. He moved before he finished thinking about it. A young resident reached for the laryngoscope. Camille stopped him with one word. "No. The protocol says. The swelling has closed the path that protocol assumes. You will spend the next 30 seconds trying the wrong door, and he does not have 30 seconds to spare." Her voice was patient, but there was no room inside it for debate. "Step back and hold the light." The resident stepped back. He held the light. Holmberg appeared at the glass. "Fortin, you are not cleared for advanced airway procedures." Camille did not look up. "Then find someone who is and get them here in the next 20 seconds. Silence. Jordan's saturation dropped to 74. 72, Marco said. Camille opened the emergency kit with one hand. The other hand did not leave Jordan's neck. "Stay with me," she said quietly. "Not a nurse's comfort, something lower, something that sounded like it had been spoken in much louder places than this. You are not done yet." Her hands moved with a precision that stopped everyone watching. No searching, no adjusting, no second attempt. The kind of hands that had learned to do difficult things in the dark, in the wind, with time already gone. The bag inflated. Jordan's chest rose. The monitor climbed 76, 81, 89. Beth exhaled so hard it fogged her face shield. The resident stared at Camille's hands like he had just witnessed something that did not fit his education. Holmberg had taken one step backward from the glass. Camille taped the airway, checked the seal, and looked at Marco. Watch him. Call me if saturation drops below 90. She stripped the used gloves and walked to Bay 2 without looking back. Tyler Wick was 19 years old and had been on the job for 6 weeks. His work boots were new enough that the laces were still clean at the tops. His hard hat had a Toronto Maple Leaf sticker on the side. He had been carrying rebar from one end of the scaffold to the other when the ice load finally won. He was also bleeding from high on his right thigh in a way that meant Bay 2 was already red when Camille arrived. Femoral, Dr. Foss asked from behind her. High junctional. Camille placed both hands in the right place, not on the wound. Up near the crease, deep. Hold here, not lower. She showed the position, then looked at the resident who had followed her. What is your name? Karen. Karen, large bore IV and warm blood products, not room temperature. Warm. She held his gaze for exactly 1 moment. Breathe first, then do the task. Karen breathed, his hands steadied. He placed the line on the first attempt. Beth was already on Tyler's other side. She had found his phone in the equipment bag a paramedic brought in with his jacket. The screen showed 17 missed calls from a contact labeled Dad. Should I? Yes, speaker, tell him Tyler is here and alive, not stable, alive. Beth answered. A man's voice came through the line high with fear. Tyler? Tyler, son. Beth's voice broke before she could speak. Camille kept one hand on the pressure point and leaned slightly toward the phone. Mr. Wick, this is Nurse Fortin at Millhaven Regional. Tyler is with us right now. He is alive and we have our hands on him. Please come to the emergency entrance. Drive carefully on the ice. We need you here in one piece. A silence stretched out across the line. Is he going to make it? Camille looked at Tyler's face, at the monitor. At the improving numbers, he is fighting, so are we. The man on the phone made a sound that had no name in any language. Beth wiped her eyes quickly. The pressure was holding. Don't celebrate a pause, Camille said. The same rhythm she'd used in Bay 1. Keep going. Holmberg moved through the bays, like a man waiting for something to fail so he could document it. The bays were not failing. They were moving fast and clean in a direction he had not planned for. In Bay 3, Dr. Foss had Gary Perot's chest managed under Camille's direction before the surgical consult line even connected. In Bay 4, Lorraine Perot, Gary's wife, who had been sorting timesheets in the site office when the trailer roof buckled under a load of ice, lay with a fractured wrist and 3 cracked ribs, fully conscious and deeply unimpressed with everything around her. Who is in charge here? She asked when Holmberg stepped into her bay. I am the medical director of this hospital. Lorraine looked him over with the measured patience of a 66-year-old woman who had spent 4 decades working alongside large men on dangerous work sites and had survived every one of them. You're standing in my light, she said. Move. He moved. Camille arrived in Bay 4 2 minutes later and checked Lorraine's vitals with quick, certain hands. Lorraine watched her face. You've done this before. Done what? Been the only person in the room who actually knew what was happening. Camille adjusted the blood pressure cuff without answering. My husband is in Bay 3, Lorraine said. Is he alive? Yes. Is he going to stay that way? Camille met her eyes. We are doing everything we know how to do, and we know a great deal. Lorraine settled back against the pillow. Good answer. She looked toward the glass wall where Holmberg was watching. That man has been smirking since you all came in. What is his problem? He thought tonight was going to be funny. Is it? Not for him. Lorraine Perot smiled for the first time since the trailer roof had come down on her. Bay 5 held Preet Sandhu, 29, an ironworker who had grabbed the scaffold railing as it went and had torn open her forearm in the process, which was turning out to be the least of her injuries. The impact had done something worse internally. Imaging was pending. Camille had her stabilized on fluids and was running repeat vitals every 2 minutes when Holmberg appeared at the curtain. You are making independent clinical decisions across 5 bays without authorization, he said. I want that documented. Document it, Camille said. Document the patient outcomes alongside it. Dr. Foss came around the curtain. Her voice had a sharpness her residents rarely heard. Craig, you need to stop. I'm observing. You are obstructing 5 critically injured people from getting care. She held his gaze and did not look away. Get out of the bays. Holmberg smiled. I'll note that you've chosen to side with a nurse over a director. I chose to side with the patients, yes. She did not blink, note that too. He stepped back. Camille looked at Foss, a small nod. Foss nodded back. Two women in the same room understanding each other in the language of people who have had to earn every inch of space they stand in. 31 minutes after the ambulances arrived, 5 patients were alive. Then the power hiccuped. Northern Ontario in a January ice storm was no stranger to grid interruptions. Millhaven Regional had backup generators, and the generators kicked in within 4 seconds. But 4 seconds in a trauma bay is a particular kind of silence. Every machine going quiet at once, every alarm dropping away. The space it leaves behind is too loud. Emergency lighting came on in red-tinged strips. Bay 1 returned first, Bay 3 flickered. Bay 5 stayed dim for 8 more seconds than it should have. When the lights came back in Bay 5, Preet Sandhu's monitor was showing numbers that were worse than before the outage. Camille was already moving. Something shifted internally, she told Foss. The impact was worse than the initial imaging suggested. She needs surgical now, not in the queue. Holmberg appeared at the bay entrance. The OR schedule. The OR schedule will include her, or it will explain in writing why it didn't. Camille looked at Foss. Call them directly, not through administration. Foss was already on the phone. Holmberg pointed at Camille. You are one nurse. One nurse does not call surgical. Camille looked at him with the steady attention of someone who had long ago stopped being surprised by the things authority says when it is afraid. I called the clinical need, she said. The phone did the rest. It was Beth who first noticed the blinking light on Jordan Crow's helmet. She had moved his equipment bag to make room near Bay 1's supply cart, and the bag had shifted and the helmet had half fallen out, and the small red light on the GoPro mount was blinking in a steady rhythm that meant one thing. It was still recording. Had been recording since before they arrived. Beth stood with the bag in her hands and said very quietly, Camille. Camille looked at the light, then looked at Holmberg, who was standing near the charge desk with his back turned, then looked at Beth. Don't touch it, she said, and don't mention it. Beth placed the bag back exactly where it had been. She did not say another word about it. At 9:47 p.m., the ambulance bay doors opened again. No stretcher. A man came through on his own feet, which was remarkable given the state of him. Kevin Wick, 46 years old, had driven 40 minutes from Heron Lake on black ice with a broken traffic app and a father's certainty that moved faster than common sense. Somewhere on Highway 11 he had clipped a guardrail. He had not stopped driving. He walked in with a gash across his forehead, a wrist bent the wrong way, and the expression of a man who did not yet understand he was also injured. Tyler Wick, he said to the first person he saw. My son, where is he? Marco stepped forward. Bay 2, let us look at your head first. I'm fine. Your son is alive and there's a nurse with him right now. Marco's voice was steady in the way that people who work in emergency medicine learn to be steady. Let us check your head and then you go to him. Deal? Kevin Wick looked at him. He was shaking hard enough to see it through his winter coat. Deal. Camille heard Kevin's voice from the hallway and stepped out. She crouched to his eye level, scrubs bright blue under the emergency lights, voice low. Mr. Wick, Tyler is stable. Once Marco clears your head, you walk to him, not before. She held his eyes. He needs to see you walk in, not be carried. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Kevin Wick looked at her for a long moment. You're the nurse he talked to on the phone. Yes. He said to trust you. She stood up, then do that. In Bay 2, Tyler had improved enough to be alert, frightened, and asking about his father with the helpless urgency of someone who has grasped for the first time how quickly the people you love can disappear. When Kevin Wick walked through the curtain of Bay 2 11 minutes later with a bandage across his forehead and Marco one step behind him, Tyler made a sound that Beth would remember for a long time. Not a word. Just breath released all at once like something he had been holding since the scaffold went down. Holmberg, watching from the corridor, said nothing. There was nothing left in the moment for him to occupy. At 10:19 p.m., the ambulance bay doors opened a final time. 2 figures in dark coats with Canadian Forces identification lanyards, and behind them a woman in a blue parka carrying a Health Canada Regional Inspector's badge. The taller officer moved through the room, with the efficiency of someone who knew how to assess a situation without appearing to look for anything. His eyes found Camille in Bay 5. He stopped. Holmberg stepped forward. This area is restricted to clinical. Major Carol Reinhardt, Canadian Forces Health Services. The officer still had not looked at Holmberg. His eyes had not moved from Camille. Sergeant Fortin, call sign Raven. The charge desk went quiet. Not all at once. Bay by bay, the way quiet travels through a room that does not want to miss what is coming. Camille finished adjusting Preet Sandhu's IV line. She did not look up immediately. When she did, her face held the expression of someone who had known this was coming, and had not yet decided whether to be relieved or not. "Major Reinhardt," she said. Holmberg's smile had gone thin and strange. "You know each other." The Health Canada inspector stepped forward. Her name was Dana Westfall, and she had not opened the folder under her arm once since she walked in. "Director Holmberg, I've been monitoring tonight's call logs. I've also been investigating Millhaven Regional since March." She paused. 4 preventable deaths in 11 months, delayed triage, cancelled consults. 1 patient, a 61-year-old man named Arthur Bremner, who waited 47 minutes for a respiratory assessment because you had reassigned the on-call therapist to cover a hospital board dinner. The room did not gasp. It went still in a way that felt heavier than noise. Marco looked at Beth. Beth looked at Camille. Camille had closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. When she opened them, they were clear. "I filed an anonymous safety complaint about Arthur Bremner," she said. Holmberg's head turned. "That was you." "Yes." "You had no authority to." He had no airway. She said it the way she had said things all night. Flat, clean, and certain. "That tends to clarify my priorities." Dr. Foss came out of Bay 3 with Gary Perot's chart in her hand. "Craig, stop talking. This is fabricated. Stop talking." Holmberg looked around the room. At the nurses, the techs, at Karen, the resident who had stopped shaking somewhere around Bay 2 and hadn't gone back. At the 5 bays, at the monitors, all of them singing. Then he looked at the equipment bag near Bay 1. The red light was still blinking. "What is that?" he said. "That," Camille said, "is a GoPro camera that has been recording since Jordan Crow's crew clocked in this morning. It was running when you made your joke at the charge desk." Holmberg's face went through several things very fast. He moved toward the bag, fast for a man in dress shoes on polished floors. Camille was faster. She stepped between him and the bag in one clean motion, not theatrical, not aggressive. Just a body placed precisely between a man and something he was not permitted to touch. "That belongs to my patient," she said. "Move." "No." He reached around her. She caught his wrist, the same unhurried, certain motion she had used all night. The kind of movement that comes from training, that does not leave the body even after years of trying to leave it behind. "Director Holmberg," Inspector Westfall said from behind him, "I strongly recommend you step back." He stepped back. His wrist was red where her hand had been. 2 RCMP officers who had arrived quietly enough that no one had noticed moved forward from the corridor. What happened in the next 2 hours was not dramatic in the way the first hour had been. It was paperwork, statements, the slow, grinding work of accountability that looks nothing like the crisis it follows and matters just as much. Holmberg was escorted to the administrative wing. His keycard was suspended at 10:41 p.m. Inspector Westfall took the GoPro into custody and confirmed in writing that it had been recording continuously since 6:17 that morning. She did not share what it contained. She didn't need to. Everyone who had been in the emergency bay when Holmberg laughed already knew. Jordan Crow was moved to the ICU at 11, breathing steadily with his airway intact. Tyler Wick was taken to vascular surgery at 11:22. Kevin Wick walked beside the gurney as far as the OR doors with Marco at his other side, and a bandage on his forehead he kept forgetting was there. Gary and Lorraine Perot were 2 bays apart. Lorraine had been informed of this and had asked for tea, and for someone to tell Gary she was fine, without telling him what had actually happened to the trailer roof, because if he knew he would worry, and worrying was bad for a man with a cracked rib. The nurse who delivered this message to Gary Perot kept a straight face through most of it. Preet Sandhu went to surgery at midnight. Her husband arrived at the ER at 11:47, soaked through and shaking, and was met by Beth, who walked him to the waiting room and sat with him until his breathing settled. Major Reinhardt found Camille at the charge desk at midnight, writing notes in the same small, precise handwriting she used for everything. "You knew we would find you eventually," he said. "I thought it would take longer. Your incident reports read like after-action filings. We recognize the format." He watched her write a line. "Your CO wants to know if you plan to re-up." She set down her pen. "I'm a nurse." "You're a search and rescue technician who is also a nurse. Those aren't the same thing." Tonight they were. He was quiet for a moment. "Sergeant Fortin." "Camille." She picked the pen back up. "I'm just Camille here." Reinhardt looked at the 6 bays, at the monitors, at the night staff moving through the room with a different quality than they'd had 8 hours ago. Less afraid of the wrong things, more attentive to the right ones. "What you did tonight," he said, "was nursing. Was also." "Nursing," she said again, "not defensive, just true. The skills came from somewhere else, but the work was nursing. Don't take that from the job." He didn't argue. He had learned over many years that Camille Fortin won arguments by being correct, which was considerably harder to fight than being loud. At 2 in the morning, Dr. Foss found Camille in the break room, with a cup of coffee going cold in her hands, and her eyes on the middle distance with the particular exhaustion of someone who has been holding something very heavy for a very long time. Foss sat across from her. "I owe you an apology," she said. Camille looked at her. "I knew the staffing was wrong. I knew protocols were being bent. I filed 1 report in 8 months and stopped when I didn't hear back." Foss's voice was level, but the effort behind it showed. "That isn't good enough." "No," Camille said, "it isn't." Foss absorbed that without flinching. "I'm not going to stop again." "Good." Camille looked at her cold coffee. "That's what matters." "Is that really what you believe? That what comes next matters more than what happened before?" Camille was quiet. Outside, the freezing rain had slowed to a hiss against the windows. "I believe that tonight we kept 5 people alive who should have had better conditions from the beginning," she said. "And I believe Arthur Bremner deserved what those 5 got tonight. And I believe that if we used tonight to fix the conditions instead of just celebrate surviving them, then it meant something." She looked up. "Crises don't redeem broken systems. Only the work does." Foss was quiet for a moment. "That's a harder answer than I wanted," she said. "I know." Camille stood and poured the cold coffee down the sink. "Most of the true ones are." 3 months later, 4 new rules went up above the charge desk at Millhaven Regional Medical Centre. They were framed, which Lorraine Perot had insisted on when she mailed them in from Heron Lake. No patient waits unseen. No clinical decision gets overridden for administrative convenience. No staff member is penalized for raising a safety concern. No one on this floor is only anything. The last line had been Lorraine's addition. Camille had objected to it. The charge desk staff had put it up anyway and pretended not to hear her. Tyler Wick recovered fully. He went back to the worksite in April and called Millhaven Regional's nursing line to say so. He spoke with Beth, who was the one who answered, and who told him that was the best phone call she'd had all week. Kevin Wick sent flowers twice. Camille read the card the first time. The second time she put the flowers at the nurse's station and didn't say whose they were from. Lorraine Perot sent a letter to the provincial health minister's office that was 4 pages long, single-spaced, and described in precise and memorable detail what it had looked like to watch a director treat 5 critically injured workers like an inconvenience, while 1 nurse held the room together with her bare hands. The letter was entered into the formal record. Craig Holmberg resigned before his suspension became a termination. The Health Canada investigation named 4 preventable deaths, 17 delayed interventions, and 1 instance of attempted evidence destruction. The GoPro footage was very clear. Jordan Crow watched it once in Inspector Westfall's office and said that from now on every member of his crew would have a camera running on every job. Not because of what it had captured, because of what it might prevent. On the last Friday of April, Camille Fortin walked into the emergency department at the start of her shift, signed the charge board, and took her place at the counter exactly as she had on every shift for the past 15 months. The difference was that the room knew, now, what that quietness meant. Not passivity, not someone waiting for permission, not someone who had run out of things to say. Just someone who had learned, in places much harder than this, that the work was the point, that preparation was a form of love, that saving a life inside a broken system was not a heroic exception to the rule. It was the clearest possible argument for fixing it. She took the chart Marco handed her, read the first 3 lines, and looked up at the board. Bay 1 needs imaging before the consult, she said. Bay 2, warm the fluids. Bay 3, I want the family briefed before the hard conversation. They shouldn't be standing in a hallway when they hear it. The room moved. No hesitation. No one looking down the corridor to see if someone with a different title had approved it first. Just people doing the work the way it was always supposed to be done. Seeing every patient, speaking every concern out loud, holding the line between people and the worst thing that could happen to them, and refusing, shift after shift after shift, to let it be ordinary. Camille Fortin picked up the marker and wrote a name on the board. Outside, the April thaw was dripping off the eaves of Millhaven Regional Medical Centre, steady and quiet and unremarkable, the way most important things are. Inside, everything was different. Not because one nurse had done something extraordinary in 1 hour on one January night. Because enough people had finally stopped, pretending that ordinary was the most they could offer.